Coming up on this spooky edition of One-on-One Sports,
we hand out our mid-season NFL awards,
predict our college football playoff teams,
and give a well-deserved eulogy to a fallen league.
All that and so much more.
And it all starts
right now.
Welcome to this episode of One-on-One Sports. I'm Brad Klier.
And I'm Andrew Vendelis. We have a lot in store, but let's step up to the plate for the quick hitters. Last night, Warriors All-Star Steph Curry broke his hand in the team's matchup with the Phoenix Suns. Following a poor start from the Dubs this season, Brad, what impact does this injury have on the Warriors' season and plans?
So the best thing that the Warriors can do at this point, and the path is completely there, is to be the 21st century version of the 96-97 Spurs. And that, whether it's even takes a lot of effort, is to tank, to be a very bad top 5, top 10 pick team. Klay's out for this entire season. You keep D'Angelo Russell or trade him, whichever you decide. And then you come into next season. Because this season, regardless if Curry got hurt or not, was a lost season. We saw how they played so far this year. They have no depth. They were awful on defense. They can't score when Curry's off the court.
They don't even have a rotation anymore.
No, exactly, because they were hard capped because of the signing trades. They couldn't sign players. So, if you come into next season with Steph Curry, with Klay back, with Draymond, with D'Angelo Russell or whatever you trade him for, and a top 5 or top 10 pick, and they have a $17 million trade exception for when they traded Andre Iguodala. So when they get out after the season from the hard cap, with that group next year, they could be scary good. So this could be a blessing in disguise.
I was going to say, they have a lot of options. And plus, free agency, you never know what's going to happen. Warriors always down to make big moves as well. But at this point, as you mentioned, they pretty much relinquished any playoff hopes they have. It also depends on if Curry needs surgery on his hand or not. That I think kind of impacts my opinion on the matter. If Curry doesn't need surgery, then I can see like them trying to be competitive and trying to, find a system that works with this new lineup. But if he does need surgery, I agree. I think they should tank. There's no reason for them not to if they're already going to be down Klay.
But even,
Steph out for an extended period of time. And secure a good draft pick, so maybe a good lottery position.
And in addition,
and it's not. Sorry, you're good. It's not going to hurt the Warriors' reputation. No. They're a dynasty. We know they're going to be a top team for the next 5-10 years as well.
Absolutely. And that first-round pick of theirs this year is top 20 protected to the Nets, if not conveyed as a 2025 second. So the point here is this. Even if Curry comes back within a 4 or 5 week time period, this team, as shown so far this season, is not a playoff team. It just isn't, unfortunately. But if they go this route, this is a blessing in disguise, and I think they're set up great to be a scary good team.
They have a lot of options, which is the good thing.
Absolutely. This past week, the NCAA Board of Governors voted unanimously to allow student athletes to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness once rules are put in place between now and January 2021. Andrew, what impact does this have on the NCAA moving forward?
We talked about this a lot in the first episode of the season, and my opinion stays the same. This opens so many doors for so many people, and we talked about how monumental it is. It is, and now it's nationwide. We don't even have to worry about states implementing it at all. So we're going to see a lot more athletes start to realize their worth early on. And not only is this good for their reputation, for their brand, it's good for them to get a sense of how business-minded they can be once they get to the professional world as well. And plus, EA, come on, camera, right here. Give me an NCAA EA Sports football game again.
Do it.
Brad, floor is yours.
Well, I mean, you took my point with the NCAA football game. But, again, if there's a player who's very talented and can be compensated, whether it's through autographs, merchandise, TV cameos, commercials, whatever it may be, they should be able to be compensated for that. Now, we look past that. We talked about that in the first episode, as you said. NCAA football game. For football, even bring back the basketball one.
And they can actually use rosters now. They don't have to be like number 5.
Yeah, because it's not like halfback number 8, wide receiver number 82.
And the big reason why they went out of commission was because it was too similar to their likenesses without being compensated.
Exactly, because the Ed O'Bannon
case. Now you don't have to worry
about
that. Merchandise, no one's going to get in trouble for anymore, a la Johnny Manziel.
You sign autographs at a convention or a Comic-Con. Exactly.
It's only positives, and that's the best part.
For us and for them.
This past Tuesday was the NFL's annual trade deadline. And while many deals were made in the build-up, deadline day had a lot of talk, but few actual deals. That being said, Brad, what deadline day trade did you like the most? And I think we're both going to agree on this one.
I'm all in on the fish tank.
Fish tank, baby. Let's go.
Aqib Talib. They basically pulled a Sam Hinkie, Sashi Brown here, took on Aqib Talib's expiring $4 million salary for a 2020 fifth-round pick with it. And towards Los Angeles, they gave a 7th-round pick in 2022, which is the football equivalent of a top 55 protected 2nd-round pick in the NBA. It's nothing. So basically what you did is for the next 2.5 months, you now have $4 million less in cap space, and you have a 5th-round pick. Basically bought a pick or upgraded a worthless pick in 3 years from now. By that point, they'll be better. A mid-round 7th for a low 5th now. It's a great move, a true process move. Chris Klier stays winning. Fish tank.
Something good for that, too, and we don't talk about it that much because it's not that much attention because he's older. Keep Talib. He's a good veteran to help mentor younger talent and get a lot.
I don't think he's even going to report to
But he might not even. But if he does, this is good for them. But at the same time, I agree with every move the Dolphins have made at the trade deadline.
Yep.
Kenyon Drake was a good move because, as you said, they're clearing up more room, and it gives them more room to, acquire more talent in the draft or maybe a top running back in free agency as well. This is the most deliberate tank we've seen in the NFL, and I'm all for it.
Well, since Sashi and the Browns.
Yes, but I fully support the Dolphins' efforts, and they're not even the worst team in the league based on talent alone. That would belong to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Week 16, Dolphins-Bengals.
Tank ball! Let's go, baby!
They also got to watch out for the Jets as well. They play the Jets twice.
Oh, God, the Jets.
0-16, we need it, Dolphins.
We need it for the Dolphins. Bengals, don't ruin it.
Well, that's all the time we have for the quick hitters this week, but stay tuned. We have a lot more in store for this Halloween spooky edition of One-on-One Sports. Spooky.
With the first college football playoff rankings being released next week, we're seeing many elite teams fighting their way for one of the coveted top 4 spots. I'm joined by Aust to see which teams are in, which teams won't be making the cut this bowl season. So let's start rattling them off. LSU, what do you think?
LSU, the definitive #1 team. They've played 2 top 10 opponents. They've beat them both handedly. They're going to play Alabama next week. That is going to be the game of the season. And if they can come out of that, obviously they will be the definitive #1 team. I see them playing at Alabama. Then they've got kind of a little bit of a cakewalk schedule to finish the season. They'll play at Ole Miss, Arkansas, and then Texas A&M. So that's an easy road to the SEC championship if they beat Alabama. Now, my #2 team, of course, is the Crimson Tide, a very close second. But again, they have that game against LSU. They got at Mississippi State, and they got Western Carolina, rep the SoCon. And then they're playing at Auburn. Now that's a big Iron Bowl game because if you're Alabama and you lose to LSU, you're already going to drop a few spots. But then if you lose at Auburn in the Iron Bowl, you're out of the college football playoff to begin with because maybe you have a Pac-12 team.
So I want to ask, because you mentioned LSU and Bama, I've been thinking, which team's more afraid of the other? Who's going to come out with the win?
I think Alabama is more afraid of LSU, not because of LSU definitively, but they're afraid of their own quarterback position because you have Tua Tagovailoa, who's been dynamic this season, but he had the high ankle sprain, and he's out 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, they had...
That was the Tennessee game, right?
The Tennessee game. He sprained his ankle in the Tennessee game, and then they had the quarterback, the flag football legend coach himself, Mac Jones, come in, played a great game against Arkansas, but again, that's Arkansas.
Quickly, though, who's going to win that game before we go on to the rest of our list?
It's in Tuscaloosa, but I'm going to give it to Joe Burrow and the LSU Tigers.
Joe Burrow, a Heisman candidate without a doubt.
He will win the Heisman Trophy if he beats Alabama.
So we're going to go to Ohio State.
The Ohio State Buckeyes, the best team in the Big Ten. I know
without a doubt.
Penn State's creeping up a little bit, but that game is going to be played in the Horseshoe. I'm going to give it to the Ohio State Buckeyes. They will win the Big Ten. They already just beat their Big Ten West opponent, Wisconsin, who was supposed to be in the Big Ten West, but we do have a surprise in the Big Ten in the Minnesota Golden Gophers. The 13th ranked Golden Gophers, undefeated, one of the only undefeated teams we've seen so far this season from the Big 12, from the Big Ten actually. So they'll most likely play in the championship.
I was going to say, what's your championship matchup? Not Penn State and Ohio State? You think it's going to be Minnesota and Ohio State?
No, Penn State and Ohio State in the same division. That Big Ten East is stacked because you've got Michigan, you've got Ohio State, and you've got Penn State. So it's always that 3-headed monster. And then you've got the little Big Ten West Minnesota Golden Gophers who will be representing.
So let's go to the team you pointed out, Penn State. Are they going to make it in?
Penn State, I can see it happening. They could definitely make it in if they beat Ohio State. And that's only if they beat Ohio State. You can maybe take a loss against Minnesota because they're going to TCF Bank on the 9th. But if you beat Ohio State, they will definitely get in the college football playoff because you're going to need a Big Ten team.
Definitely. Let's go back to the ACC. Clemson.
Clemson, they've been underwhelming this season, but they have really stepped it up. And it's been not Trevor Lawrence, their quarterback, who's been kind of a little disappointing this season. It's been their playmaker.
He's young. It's fine.
He's young. It's fine. He'll be the #1 pick next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Bar none.
After Tua.
But they've got T. Higgins, and they've got Travis Etienne, their dynamic running back, and their dynamic wide receiver. And they've got the easiest schedule out of the remaining teams. They've only got one ranked team, and it's at home, and it's the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Go Deeks. But I mean, they play Wofford, they play NC State at home, and they've got at South Carolina.
Did they make it in?
They're going to make it in. They're going to finish undefeated. They'll run away with the ACC.
So let's round things off here with the team you talked about against Ohio State, Penn State.
Penn State.
Real quick. I know we touched on it briefly.
I know we touched on it, but Penn State, they kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, they have such a great, well-balanced defense, and they've got the best named defensive linemen in Yetur Gross-Matos and Shaka Toney. Two great guys who have 5.5 sacks each this season. Their defense has been dynamic so far, and they've had some players ball out, especially KJ Hamler, who's been leading them in receiving. Very balanced attack, and every ball carrier is happy right now in Happy Valley because you've got 6 ball carriers who have at least multiple rushing touchdowns, so they're really getting in. James Franklin, if they can beat Minnesota and they beat Ohio State, you will see the Nittany Lions in the college football playoff.
One more team left to go that we didn't talk about just yet. The Oregon Ducks.
One more team, the Oregon Ducks. They kind of came out of nowhere. They did blow a lead against Auburn in the first game of the season, but that was 2 months ago. They've really bounced back, and their defense is the one who stepped up, not just Justin Herbert in the offense. Their defense, in their first 3 Pac-12 games, they allowed a combined 17 points. Their defense has really slammed the door on the Pac-12, and their offense just had 2 shootout games on the road against Washington and at home against Washington State.
So do they make it in? One of the tougher ones?
It's one of the tougher ones because you want to see a Pac-12 team, but I think you're going to have 2 SEC teams. No matter what happens, if the situations hold, you're going to have LSU be the one if they beat Alabama, and Alabama if they beat Auburn.
Nothing out of the ordinary from the college football world, but a lot of, X factors potentially.
A lot of X factors.
Do you agree with our opinions? Comment below and let us know, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at 101 Sports.
With a week of NBA basketball in the books, teams and players are looking to get off to a hot start. Some teams have done just that, while others look to recover after a rocky start. I'm joined here at the desk by our leading NBA gurus, Abenstein and Will Burns, to discuss their reactions to a drama-filled start to the NBA season. So, Will, I'm going to you first. We've seen the games thus far. Who's been the most disappointing team?
I think it's got to be the Golden State Warriors. We knew they didn't have a front court going in. This team was just basically Steph Curry and D'Angelo Russell. Now Steph Curry could be out for about 3 to 4 months. We knew they didn't have a bench, D-League caliber players on there. But they lost 43-19 in the first quarter to the Suns last night. That's unacceptable.
They got blown up
This
by
is
the
the
Thunder,
team that
too.
was in the NBA Finals last year.
Yeah, and now they're going to be in the lottery, which is going to be like a Spurs, David Robinson, Tim Duncan situation where they're bad for 1 year.
As we said earlier in the show.
And they end up getting a hype draft pick and a good pick, and they're good for the next 20 years.
Absolutely.
Your team?
My team is the Sacramento Kings. They were supposed to be the team that made the playoffs this year out west. They almost made it last year. I think it's due to them firing Dave Yeager and hiring Luke Walton. Yeager was a great head coach for them. All the players loved him. And Luke Walton, I mean, he didn't get a lot of respect out in LA. And clearly they're 0-5 right now already.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're really, really freaking bad right now. And that's on management. They're a capped out
It's the
team.
same roster. Same
Still,
exact roster.
yeah, exactly, because like you said with Luke
But
Walton.
that Harrison Barnes contract.
Yeah, that's a whole separate discussion, but the point, like you said, relatively the same team, and they're performing significantly worse. Even the Buddy Hield, De'Aaron Fox backcourt that was dynamic last year, it's not playing well.
Surprising.
Evan, I'm going to you on this one, the opposite. The team that's playing very well so far is not going to sustain it.
It's the Dallas Mavericks, and it's all due to one player. Luka is amazing, but it's all because of Kristaps Porzingis. He always comes out of the season firing on all cylinders, averaging 20-plus points per game efficiently, and he's the leader of the team. January, February comes along, he's going to be averaging in the teens again. He hasn't been able to sustain it once in his career over a full season, and this is a guy who's coming off a torn ACL now. You really think a guy off of a torn ACL who can't even play in January or February? He's never played one game. He played one game in April his entire career.
Yeah,
Look at the jersey.
And he's 7'3", so that's not very good on the knees. But my team is actually the Phoenix Suns. They're 3-2 right now with wins against arguably the best team in the league, the Clippers. They beat the Warriors last night, like I said. But this team, Booker, Oubre, Ayton, have gotten up to a great start. I don't see it continuing.
They're going to be Aiden's gotten off to a great start. He played one game.
All right, whatever. Let him keep going. Let him keep going. He's suspended.
He's
keep
played.
going.
his suspension is about to happen. He's appealing right now. But anyway, they've gotten off to a hot start. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the West. We know that. They have been the past decade. So
what if this is the season they turn it around? You know, they got Devin Booker.
So.
They got some good pieces.
They took Denver to overtime in a very closely contested game
Couple
as well.
one-point losses out there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They've been playing well.
So last question here. I'm going to you first, Will. The player who's been surprisingly good thus far.
I'm going to go with Gordon Hayward of the Boston Celtics. Obviously, a few years back, he had that brutal injury, but this is the first time he's looked like himself in a long time. He's shooting 58% from three, and it's not just his stats. He's been much more aggressive. He's driving. He's finishing. 17 points per game. He
definitely looks more confident.
This isn't his team anymore. That's the thing. It's Jalen Tatum, or it's Jalen Brown's team, Jason Tatum's team, and Kemba Walker's team, and they're going to be the top 3 players. Gordon Hayward's getting paid like the top player on their team. And he's playing better, but he's not his former self. He averaged 22.
Well, he's never going to be his former self.
Why not?
True.
Paul George broke his leg and he came back his former self.
It's
2
true,
years
but
later.
at this point, I think what we've seen thus far, it's unlikely that I think at least he ever gets that form. But he's more confident and more aggressive.
He's looked much better.
The player that you think has outperformed, I know you're going. Go
Mr.
ahead.
R.J. Barrett. I did not expect him to come in and be this leader, this guy who can literally take the offense and score at will. You know, he's scoring against great defenders, Derek White, DeJounte Murray on the Spurs. He's going right at them and scoring 20+ per game. He's grabbing 10+ rebounds per game. He's a great passer. His defense is better than expected. And he's 19 years old. You know, he's doing this at 19 years old as a rookie.
And he's thriving in Madison Square Garden.
And none of the players or GMs thought he was going to be this good, because when those votes came out for the polls, they said Cam Reddish was going to have a better career than him in 5 years. RJ Barrett was not getting any votes, and now look at him.
He's been fantastic.
He's been awesome.
One player I got to throw in there. See that Miami Heat jersey there? Kendrick Nunn from the G League to being a prolific starting player for the Heat thus far. But that's all the time we have here from the Hardwood. But don't go away, because we'll be right back with more of this episode of One-on-One Sports.
The NFL season halfway done, many players have had the chance to show if their offseason hype was real or not. Here to predict who will be taking home the Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and MVP awards this year is Connor Witsoe and Kole Noble. So Connor, we're going to start with you. Who's your Defensive Player of the Year?
Defensive Player of the Year is going to be Nick Bosa of the 49ers. Hear me out. 7 sacks. That would be amazing if it's 20.
Oh my God.
7 sacks, 20 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and here's the big thing, 1 interception. Now, 1 interception short, but the fact that he is intercepting the football, the fact that he's going beyond what his job is to do, that's why Nick Bosa is my Defensive Player of the Year.
And even a game-winning sack as well.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how you can go with Nick Bosa. He's not even the best rookie defensive end in the league. Josh Allen, more sacks, more tackles, more fumbles. But for me, I'm going to go with Devin McCourty. He's on the best defense in the NFL with New England, and he's the anchor in their secondary. 5 interceptions already this year. He's only had 10 targets at safety. He's been phenomenal and just been the leader on that defense.
Yeah, but it's easy to say that when you have guys just doing their job well. Now, don't get me wrong, he's a great player, but when you don't go outside of your own job to kind of make the game better, like how can you make yourself the best Defensive Player of the Year? You got to go beyond that, and that's why I put Nick Bosa there.
Well, we're going to go from players trying to make a name for themselves to coaches trying to make a name for themselves. Cole, who's your Coach of the Year?
I got Frank Wright for the Indianapolis Colts. This team was an absolute dumpster fire. 1 week before the season, they had Andrew Luck just straight up walk out the door and retire. But yet they're still first in their division at 5-2. And the AFC South is a tough division. There's 4 teams in that division with 4 wins. They've been impressive so far. And then the Colts have been just dominating it.
Yeah. Okay, I went with Kyle Shanahan Shanahan, thank you, for the 49ers. But here's the thing about the Colts. Great, you guys have won 5 games and lost 2. But out of all of your wins, the most points that you have kept above a team is 7. So how can you call yourselves the Coach of the Year if you only are up 7 points at most when you win a game? The 49ers went at this time last year, they were 1-7. Now they are 7-0. They are leading their division and they are undefeated.
Kyle Shanahan, Frank Reich, both great coaches in the league. So we're going to move on to Rookie of the Year. Connor, who you got?
I went with Josh Jacobs, as I'm guessing you went with him too.
Yep.
I mean, For me, I just feel like there's no rookie that has proved himself more. He's got 124 carries, 620 yards, 4 touchdowns, and even guys like Kyle Murray, I just don't see them moving up.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Jacobs is averaging 5 yards a carry, and like you said, no other rookie's performing quite like he is. The only one you can say is probably Gardner Minshew, but you also got to remember they have an $88 million quarterback coming in and taking a spot.
Well, final award, MVP. Cole, who's it going to?
I got to go with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, come on.
That was a hard.
Can we hold up for a
say.
second? He's wearing a Packers jersey. Can we call bias
all right,
here?
Time out. Cole, Case.
Tied for first in the league in touchdowns with 16. Second in the league in yards. This guy has a 7-1 record. He's 4-0 without his number 1 receiver. How do you not give him MVP?
Actually, wrong. Russell Wilson, who is my pick, not a Seahawks fan. Let's make that clear. 17 touchdowns, less interceptions, and a higher completion percentage.
1 interception to be exact.
One
not
interception.
To put out my own biases, but anyways.
So I don't see. Now, Aaron Rodgers, very good. I can't deny that. Unfortunately, I'd say he's good as a Bears fan. But Russell Wilson is still better. He has shown himself more. He has more completion percentage. He is making passes fast. He is making passes to his players better than Aaron Rodgers.
Both very good candidates. It's a tough argument, that's for sure. But those are our NFL midseason awards. But what do you think of our analysts' takes? Follow us on Twitter at 101 Sports and let us know which players you think will take home the awards at the end of the year.
With the Nationals taking down the Astros in Game 7 to capture their first ever world title, we welcome you into the MLB offseason. I'm Brad Klier, joined by Javik Blake and Matt Laguzza in the studio to break down all of the manager vacancies and jobs that have filled up in the past few weeks. So Javik, I'm going to go to you first. Joe Girardi, Joe Madden, hired by the Phillies and the Angels respectively. What do you think of those 2 hires?
I think they're both great moves, but one move that really stands out is Joe Girardi to the Philadelphia Phillies. I love that move. Gabe Kapler was a manager. Yes, he was good, but he lost this team every single year. They're so talented. You got JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Harper, Aaron Nola. This is not a team that should have only won 81 games this year. Girardi will help bring that clubhouse together, and it's the opposite situation of when he came to the New York Yankees. When he left New York, they needed someone to really be players' friends in the clubhouse, not really to unite it. In Philly, they need a guy who can unite this clubhouse together as one, and he's the guy to do it.
Agreed, absolutely. Matt?
I completely agree with that. Joe Girardi is an amazing hire, but I'm going to go with the other one and go to Joe Madden with the Angels. If anybody can get the Angels back to the top, it's going to be Joe Madden. Yes, the Angels have the 28th ranked farm system in the MLB, but come on. They got Mike Trout, best player in baseball. They just need someone that's experienced. He's had 8 postseason appearances, 2 pennants, and a World Series title. If anybody can get them back to the top, it's got to be Joe Madden.
So we just spoke on Joe Madden. Talking about the Cubs, Joe Madden's former place, David Ross, the new manager, taking his spot. What are your thoughts on that hire?
I love David Ross. He's a leader in the clubhouse. He was on this team in 2016 when the Cubs won it. He knows most of the guys in the clubhouse, and that's what they need. They've got a solid team. They need some help in the pen, but they've got the pieces to be able to contend again. And just someone to bring a little more energy into the clubhouse. He's kind of like Joe Madden. He knows how to handle the pitching staff. He's inexperienced, but I think he can get the job done.
And he's incredibly inexperienced. You want to talk about maybe one of the least experienced managers in baseball. It's going to be him. But what it shows is the Cubs are going towards the new school thing of analytics, where the manager's nothing but a figurehead, a guy to talk to the press.
Front office,
and basically a puppet for the front office. The analytic guys are going to be running everything behind the scenes. He's going to be one to make sure the clubhouse chemistry is okay, everyone's happy, and he'll make moves. You'll see him go to the mound and make a pitching change. But this is all... It's more him just in the clubhouse, really making sure everything's okay between the players and giving them analytical information. But it really all falls in the analytics team for the Cubs to help them win a World Series.
Yeah, and if you look at David Ross, we mentioned 2016, he was revered in that locker room. Such a great relationship with the guys there that are still there. Last question here. Got to bring up the New York Mets, I'm sorry. Interesting manager search, to put it in the smallest. Javik, who do you think ends up being the Mets manager?
Well, the Mets are being the Mets again.
Shocking.
An interesting managerial search that ends up with Joe Madden leaving and not getting hired, Joe Girardi not getting hired. They couldn't even get David Ross to be hired. Not that he was really an option.
He wasn't.
But
No. Yeah.
He wasn't an option, but those are the 3 great managers that were all out there that didn't get hired. And I think because it's the Mets, they're going to hire Carlos Beltran. He's a guy who, like David Ross, knows this team. He's familiar with the organization and players. Matt, you might cry on camera because of this. They're going to take the same approach as the Chicago Cubs, except with the Mets. They aren't that analytically inclined, and with the Cubs, they have Theo Epstein running the front office. For the Mets, they have a former agent.
Brody.
I love Carlos Beltran. I grew up watching him. He's a great player, but knowing the Mets, they might go with him. But for me, I think the best person to go with would be Eduardo Perez. None of them have good experience in managing, but out of all of them, he's got the most experience. I think he would do a better job than any of the other 4 very inexperienced and not good managers that the Mets could hire. But the Mets are going cheap, and the only good thing I can see out of this is maybe, just maybe, since we're saving on managers, we'll maybe do something this offseason.
And I thought
that's cute.
I thought it was funny also, the Mets had the bombshell candidate, right? Who did that bombshell candidate end up being?
Pat Murphy?
Yeah, Brewers bench coach Pat Murphy. Great.
Wow, great job.
Go Mets, go, baby.
AJ Hinch, come on.
I will say
he's
this,
going to leave
though.
Houston.
One other candidate of note here, Tim Bogar, 3 interviews, got that big Fred Wilpon interview from Washington. I think that could very well end up being the Mets' new manager. That's all we have here from the Diamond, but be sure to check here on 101 Sports on YouTube for more off-season coverage around the MLB.
Welcome to the 2nd episode of Man on the Street at 101 Sports. I'm Luis Mueller, accompanied by
Gray Aust, and we are here to ask Harry, how does it feel to be the MVP of a game that hasn't even started yet?
You know, as you can see, I work hard in warm-ups. Look at this, you know?
For sure.
Yeah, and so, you know, it feels really good. We're going to win. We know that. I mean, because we do that. Like, this is something we do on a daily. We were ready for the students, and of course I'm going to be MVP.
Who has the best beard in sports?
Oh, Justin Turner.
Oh, what? Okay. Yeah, why Justin
100%.
Turner?
I mean, obviously, it's like a huge, like, orange beard. Like, there's no question about that. Do you disagree with that?
It's orange. Like, that's awkward.
No, it's not. What? Like, it's rare. It's special.
I think Patrick Kane had a great beard during NHL playoff season, but NHL playoff beards in general, outstanding.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with the Elon Phoenix. Mr. Phoenix, we have a simple question to ask you. Who has the best beard in sports?
Can you not talk?
Can you not talk?
James Harden.
the Phoenix with words of wisdom, filling us with James Harden as his answer. Who has the best beard in sports?
Oh my God! It's got to be what is it? Kirkpatrick or Kilpatrick on the Dolphins?
Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick.
God, he sucks. But let me tell you, can the man grow a beard?
We're here with Brandon, one of the members of SGA, who put this together. Another topic: who has the best beard in sports?
In sports, like all time or just currently?
You can give me any answer.
So Dirk Nowitzki's beard back in the 2010 playoff from the Mavericks had was really awesome. Unfortunately, they lost in the 3rd round, but I'm going to give it to Sergio Romo for the Giants because they swept, 8 years ago, 2014? So, yeah, best beard in sports, easy, Sergio Romo.
Evan, who has the best beard in sports? And if you say Mitchell Robinson, I will walk off the set.
No, we're going to go with, actually, Ronny Turioff. He hasn't played in the NBA since probably 2012, 2013, but he played with the Knicks in 2015. And, I mean, that beard was just, it was majestic.
Luscious.
It was majestic. Who has the best beard in sports?
Best beard in sports. You know, LeBron's been growing that thing out for a minute now. You know what I mean? Like,
I think all the hair on the top came down.
It just came, you know what I mean? And then when he put the road game right here, it just went right down to the chin.
He grew hair somehow.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know. There was no hairline in the beginning of his career. I don't know.
James Harden. That's like the third or fourth answer that we've heard. You ain't got anybody else?
He takes pride in that beard. Like, who else? Fear the beard, man. Like, James Harden.
I mean, he is the beard. He is the beard, so James Harden is a great choice.
He is the beard, obviously a great choice. You love to see the student faculty involvement. You can also see the involvement on 101 Sports, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram. Follow us and subscribe.
Today, we end this Halloween edition of 101 Sports on a somber note, as the Reaper has come for the Arena Football League.
Give me a second. The Arena Arena Football League has suspended all local business operations in its 6 markets amid significant financial difficulties. This unique and different brand of football was exciting and high scoring, but unfortunately is gone too soon.
May the Arena Football League rest in peace.